And finally, for this session, let me introduce Karen White. Karen is currently an advisor to the Foundation's Food Security Program. She brings a wealth of experience in marketing to the table from an international perspective, and will speak to us today about the importance of positive communication to bring to bear the right focus for the opportunities that are available to us as a nation. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Adie. We're experiencing a great disconnect. We know that there's a need for food security and an enormous opportunity to supply food to Asia. But at the same time, we've got struggling farmers, a struggling food processing industry, difficulties in the supply chain, difficulties with our land, as the Major General's just explained, and consumers who often choose what's cheapest, whether it's imported or local. To make the most of the Asian century, I agree with John that we need to start at home. Let's not forget the consumer. And as a consumer marketer, I believe the core issue here is one of perception. If we're to make the most of the opportunity, we need to identify the vision and communicate it accordingly. If we want Australia to be the food basket of Asia, and we're truly excited about this opportunity, we need to start to say so. We need to consciously create and communicate an image of Australia and of Australian produce that has meaning and relevance in this changing environment. We need to engage consumers. If we think about the growing of food and food production and how it's discussed in our country now, we have to conclude that primarily it's doom, gloom, and negativity. It's definitely not a cause for optimism, excitement, and opportunity. Every news item contains negative comments on the industry: drought, floods, the high Aussie dollar, suicidal farmers, ageing farmers, the sellout of vast tracts of land to foreign investors, rural depopulation, job losses due to the relocation of production and processing to overseas. It's all very depressing. And perception is 9/10 of reality. And in Australia right now, our perception is that mining is good, while food, farming and manufacturing are not so good. Compounding this is the fact that food and food production is an umbrella descriptor for a myriad of different types of producers and businesses. It's a disparate group, unlike, say, mining or car manufacturers, who are much easier to get a handle on. Mining seen as booming, full of opportunity, wealth-generating, sexy, aspirational. Food is seen as functional, old-fashioned, hard to solve, and maybe a bit of a lost cause. And it's this perception we've got to change. And if we do nothing to change anything, the downward trajectory and slow creep to oblivion will continue. If we're to capitalise on the food opportunity, which we all agree is there, we have to change the image of food and food production in Australia in order to generate this interest and excitement, and thereby attract the investment, the talent, the innovation, and the development. We have to change the way we communicate if we're going to convince Australian consumers and also Asian consumers that Australian food is worth choosing. We need a visionary message if we're to change our paradigm. Once there was a vast empty land with clear blue skies, as you're seeing on the slides, endless sunshine populated with straight-talking, honest people, millions of hectares of land supplying meat, wheat, sugar, and countless other products made it a food basket. Australia, for this was our land, was the lucky country awash in riches that's prospered almost without conscious management or intervention, a bit like mining is today. But somehow, after this easy money foundered over global economic shifts and Britain's entry to the EU, in a single generation, our memory of Australia's farming heritage has faded. In truth, this is the authentic Australia, and its characteristics give us a unique opportunity. Where are the blue skies in Asia? Where are the clean green lands? With worries about the safety of the food chain, who is better placed to guarantee the integrity of a product than an honest and well-educated nation with this kind of DNA? I would suggest it's time to revisit brand Australia. We're not very good at blowing our own trumpet. It's counter to our low-key, laconic approach. We're embarrassed about selling ourselves. We don't think it's necessary, but in an Asian century, the role of brands is key. Think of the success that premium brands, super brands, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, are having in Asia right now. Why should Australia not be a super brand? Brand Australia's vast, empty, responsibly nourished and husbanded land, bright blue skies, clean air, sunshine and pure water. It's honest, well-educated people who care and believe in the integrity of the product and the process of getting it to market. In a world where consumers are increasingly divorced from food sourcing and production, and which is peppered with food safety scares, provenance and transparency are increasing buzzwords among a fast-growing consumer segments. With a fast-expanding middle class, Australia is ideally positioned to satisfy this need for consumers who need to know where their food comes from, and this is where Brand Australia comes in. It could be an umbrella positioning that would benefit all our food producers, and which, when used powerfully and consistently, would come to have real meaning. There's no doubt this image of Australian product would be very powerful overseas, but what about at home? Once before we had a Buy Australia Made campaign, but we abandoned it. New Zealand launched a Buy New Zealand Made campaign nearly 30 years ago, and it has consistently maintained it ever since, and what's more, has integrated it with the messages from the New Zealand Tourist Board. This has resulted in powerful New Zealand imagery, which all their producers and marketers can tap into. We in Australia have the opportunity to do the same. We need to make a conscious choice to generate positive and optimistic messages about Australian food and food production. It's a message which will reap long-term dividends and one which is vital for the future of Australia's food opportunity. So what should we do? First, we need to change our paradigm and agree to create a big vision. For those here last night, I'm thinking of Steve's mum. If we reach for the stars, we might clear the trees. We need to recognise food as a major opportunity for Australia, an opportunity which long-term can be just as great as mining and which could be more sustainable. We should reinforce this by creating Brand Australia as a halo communication across the disparate elements of Australian food growers and businesses, and in fact all Australian products. And we should reinstate a Buy Australia Made strategy, reconfigured with a different spin to reflect a changing world. It would be easy to be cynical and say this is naive. We've heard it all before, done it all before, but like anything, timing is everything. There's no doubt about the opportunity. It's up to us whether we choose to communicate it. The advent of new media and a new way of marketing with faster, more direct information channels with extraordinary reach would facilitate communication of our vision and of our Australia brand. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Karen. That brings us to the end of this panel and each individual speaker. Would you join me in thanking the panel, please?